A millionaire laughed when his 7-month pregnant wife said she wanted none of his houses, none of his money, and none of the life he thought she could not survive without. He believed the divorce was already won, until his own lawyer read the name on her marriage record and stopped cold. Stay with this story to the end, because the name Derek Pierce ignored for years is about to change the room. And if you enjoy emotional stories about family, dignity, and second chances, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next one. Disclaimer: this original story is a fictional dramatization created solely for entertainment. All characters, companies, organizations, events, and circumstances are invented, and any resemblance to real people or entities is coincidental. Part 1. I don't want anything. What kind of woman asks for nothing when she is about to lose everything? The question never left Derek Lawson Pierce's mouth. It did not have to. His laugh said it for him. Soft at first, then louder. Across the polished walnut table, Savannah Elise Bradford sat perfectly still, one hand resting over the curve of her 7-month pregnancy, while rain traced silver lines down the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. 40 stories below, Manhattan moved through the afternoon like nothing important was happening. But inside that private mediation room, a marriage was being dismantled one signature at a time. "I'm sorry," Derek said, leaning back in his leather chair. Did she just say nothing? His attorney, Thomas Avery, did not smile. Savannah's attorney, Monica Keene, did not blink. Savannah only lowered her eyes to the settlement papers. The diamond ring was already gone from her finger. A faint pale line remained where it had been. 3 years of marriage reduced to a mark on her skin. Monica turned toward her carefully. "Savannah, I need to ask one more time. You understand the rights available to you under the proposed settlement?" "Yes." Her voice was quiet. Not weak. Quiet. "And you understand that you are not required to waive any lawful claim simply because you want this process over?" "I understand." Derek's mouth curved. He wore a charcoal Brioni suit, silver cuff links, and the expression of a man watching a negotiation end exactly as he expected. "Then we're done," he said. "She doesn't want the penthouse. She doesn't want the Hamptons property. She doesn't want maintenance." He looked directly at Savannah. "For once, you're being realistic." The baby moved beneath her ivory maternity dress. Savannah pressed her palm gently against the kick. A tiny reminder. "Stay calm. Stay here." Monica's pen stopped above the page. "Savannah, state clearly what you are requesting." Savannah inhaled. "My personal belongings. The nursery rocking chair. A parenting framework to be finalized after our daughter is born. Medical coverage. Child support determined under the law." She paused. "And nothing else from him." Derek laughed again. This time there was no attempt to hide it. "Unbelievable." Thomas glanced at him. Derek continued. "She came into this marriage with nothing. Now she finally has the dignity to leave the same way." Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that makes people suddenly aware of clocks. Tick, tick, tick. Savannah looked up. Her face was pale, beautiful, framed by soft champagne blonde waves that fell over one shoulder. Her blue-gray eyes showed no anger. That unsettled Derek more than tears would have, because Savannah had cried before. In bathrooms, in parked cars, in the nursery after hearing his voice soften for Vanessa Cole in ways it had not softened for his wife in months. But not today. Today, she simply reached beneath the neckline of her dress and touched the small gold pendant resting against her chest. A worn oval, almost ordinary. On the back was one engraved letter. B. Monica noticed the gesture. So did Thomas. Derek did not. He was already checking his phone. Vanessa had sent him a message. "Is it over yet?" He typed beneath the table. "Almost." Thomas gathered the final documents. "Before execution, I need to confirm the legal identities of both parties for the record." Derek sighed. "Fine." Thomas began. "Derek Lawson Pierce." "Yes." Then he looked down at Savannah's file. His eyes moved across the line once. Then again. Something changed in his face. So small Derek missed it. Monica did not. Thomas adjusted his glasses. "Savannah Elise." Savannah lifted her eyes. For the first time that afternoon, Monica leaned back in her chair. Derek frowned. Thomas stared at the surname printed on the certified marriage record. The room seemed to grow quieter. Even the rain sounded farther away. Then Thomas looked directly at Savannah. And the millionaire who had laughed because his pregnant wife wanted nothing was seconds away from learning the one thing he had never bothered to ask. Her name. Part 2. The woman he thought he saved 3 years earlier. Derek Pierce believed he had rescued Savannah from an ordinary life. That was his first mistake. He met her on a gray October morning inside a community housing center in Brooklyn, where volunteers were sorting winter coats into cardboard boxes beneath flickering fluorescent lights. Derek had arrived in a black town car. Savannah had arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing a cream sweater, faded jeans, and rain-damp blonde hair twisted loosely over one shoulder. She did not recognize him. That alone caught his attention. Most people did. Pierce Urban Development had just landed its first major downtown contract. His face had appeared in business magazines beside words like visionary, aggressive, unstoppable. Savannah looked at him and said, "If you're here to help, grab that box." Derek actually laughed. "What box?" She pointed. "The heavy one." No flirting. No nervous smile. No sudden interest when he introduced himself. Just work. By lunch, Derek knew she coordinated volunteers for the nonprofit 3 days a week. She drove an old blue Subaru with a dent near the rear bumper. She packed her own sandwiches. She wore no designer labels, and around her neck hung a small gold pendant. Oval. Worn. Almost too simple to notice. "What does the B stand for?" Derek asked once. Savannah touched it instinctively. "My mother's family." "Cute." That was all he said. Savannah watched him for half a second longer, as if waiting for another question. It never came. At the time, she found that comforting. Derek was ambitious, charming, relentlessly focused. He talked about buildings the way other men talked about legacy. He wanted to change skylines. Savannah wanted quieter things. A home, children, work that mattered. For nearly a year, they fit. He loved that she never asked what a dinner cost. She loved that he once drove 40 minutes through a snowstorm because she had mentioned craving lemon pie. When he proposed, there were no cameras. No champagne tower. Just the two of them on the roof of her apartment building under a cold blue sky. Savannah said yes before he finished the question. For a while, happiness felt simple. Then Pierce Urban Development began growing. Investors arrived. Private dinners became normal. Derek's suits became more expensive. His phone stayed face down at breakfast. And Savannah learned that success did not always change people. Sometimes it only gave certain parts of them permission to speak louder. The first time she noticed it was at a fundraising dinner. A senior investor mentioned a private capital group quietly backing several redevelopment projects. Bradford Legacy Capital. Derek leaned forward immediately. "They're impossible to get access to," he said. "Old money. Very private." Across the table, Savannah stopped moving. The investor continued. "They helped stabilize the Harbor District deal last year." Derek shook his head. "I'd give anything for one meeting with them." Savannah looked down. On the printed dinner program was a small crest beside the sponsor list. A simple geometric B. Her fingers rose slowly to the pendant at her throat. Same shape. Same letter. Same family mark. Derek never noticed. He was too busy asking how to get introduced. Later that night, as they rode home through Manhattan, he complained for 20 minutes about how men born into powerful families never understood what it meant to build something from nothing. Savannah stared through the window at the passing lights. She could have told him then. She almost did. But Derek reached for his phone before she spoke. And somewhere between the ringing elevator bells and the reflection of her own face in the glass, Savannah made a decision she would later regret. She stayed silent. Not because she was ashamed of the name Bradford. Because she wanted to know how Derek would love her without it. She did not yet understand that one day, he would mistake her silence for emptiness. Part 3. Success changes the question. Success did not ruin Derek Pierce overnight. It happened quietly. One correction at a time. One dinner at a time. One small humiliation Savannah was expected to forgive. By the second year of their marriage, Pierce Urban Development had become one of Manhattan's fastest-growing private development firms. Derek's face appeared on magazine covers. His interviews were clipped into investor presentations. His name opened doors that once stayed locked. And slowly, he began deciding which version of Savannah belonged beside him. "Don't wear that tonight," he told her before a charity gala. Savannah looked down at her pale blue dress. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing. It just looks simple." Simple. The same word he had once used like a compliment. Now it sounded like an accusation. At dinners, he corrected her stories before she finished them. At fundraisers, he introduced her as "my wife," instead of mentioning the housing program she helped build. When she asked questions about a redevelopment proposal, Derek smiled, as if she were a child wandering into an adult conversation. You don't need to worry about that stuff. Savannah stopped asking. Then she became pregnant. For one brief week, everything softened. Derek kissed her stomach before there was anything to see. He ordered books about fatherhood. He stood in the unfinished nursery holding a tiny pair of white socks and looked almost frightened by how much they meant. Savannah thought she had him back. She was wrong. By the 7th month, Derek was staying late at the office 4 nights a week. That was when Vanessa Cole became impossible to ignore. Vanessa was 32, polished, sharp, and perfectly engineered for Derek's new world. As vice president of communications, she understood cameras, donors, investors, and the careful language wealthy men used when they wanted selfish decisions to sound strategic. She wore red when everyone else wore black. She laughed before Derek finished his jokes. And unlike Savannah, she never made him feel questioned. The first time Savannah noticed Derek touch Vanessa's lower back at a company reception, she told herself it meant nothing. The second time, she stopped lying to herself. After that came the appointments Derek missed. The prenatal scans attended alone. The dinners reheated twice before Savannah finally wrapped them in foil. One Thursday night, she arrived at Derek's office carrying ultrasound photographs. Their daughter had turned her face toward the screen that morning. Savannah had been excited to show him. The executive floor was almost empty. Then she heard Vanessa laughing behind the half-closed conference room door. Savannah stopped. Derek's voice followed. I'm tired of pretending she fits this life. Vanessa said something too low to hear. Then Derek laughed. No, Savannah is sweet. She's just not someone who belongs in the room anymore. The words landed without sound. Savannah looked at the ultrasound images in her hand. A tiny profile, a tiny nose, a life that had no idea its mother's heart had just cracked open. Vanessa spoke again. And after the baby? A pause. Then Derek said, after the baby, I'll handle it. Savannah did not open the door. She walked away, past the glass offices, past the receptionist's desk, past the framed photograph of Derek ringing the opening bell for a project she had stayed up all night, helping him prepare years earlier. At home, she entered the unfinished nursery. No lights, no music, only the distant sound of Manhattan traffic behind the windows. Savannah sat in the rocking chair and removed the gold pendant from beneath her blouse. The engraved B pressed into her palm. For 6 years, she had ignored one number. She opened her phone. Found it. Called. Someone answered on the second ring. A man's voice, older now. Controlled. Hello. Savannah closed her eyes. This is Savannah. Silence. Then the voice changed. Miss Bradford. Her breath caught. We were wondering when you would come home. Part 4. The divorce offer. Derek asked for the divorce on a Tuesday morning. No shouting. No broken glass. No dramatic confession. Just a folder placed beside Savannah's untouched tea. I think this is best for both of us. She stared at the papers. Outside the kitchen windows, rain blurred the skyline into gray. Inside, the refrigerator hummed. The baby kicked once. Then again. Derek remained standing. He did not sit beside her. That hurt more than Savannah expected. When did you decide? She asked. Derek adjusted his cuff. A while ago. Savannah looked up. Before or after Vanessa? His expression tightened. That is not what this is about. It was. They both knew it. But Derek had already begun rewriting the story in his head. The marriage had failed because Savannah had changed. Because pregnancy made her emotional. Because she no longer understood his world. Because success required sacrifices. Never because he had betrayed her. Never because he had stopped seeing her as a person. His attorney sent the first settlement proposal 48 hours later. The numbers were generous by Derek's standards. A temporary apartment. A fixed monthly allowance. Limited access to the Hamptons property. A confidential settlement agreement designed to keep everything quiet. He expected resistance. He prepared for war. Savannah surprised him. She hired Monica Keene. Then she asked for almost nothing. My personal belongings, Savannah said during their first legal conference. Monica looked over the rim of her glasses. The penthouse. No. The vacation property? No. Maintenance. Savannah hesitated. No. Monica placed her pen down. Savannah, wanting peace is not the same as surrendering rights. I know. You are carrying his child. You do not have to make yourself smaller just to leave cleanly. Savannah's eyes moved to the window. I'm not doing this for Derek. Then why? She took a breath. Because I don't want my future tied to his generosity. Monica studied her for several seconds, then nodded once. Fine, but we will reserve the child-related orders until after the baby is born, and we will handle them under the law. Savannah agreed immediately. A temporary parenting framework, medical coverage, and child support would be addressed properly, with the final terms subject to the court. But everything Derek believed defined victory? The penthouse, the houses, the cars, the status. Savannah did not want them. When Derek heard, he laughed. She knows she can't fight me. Vanessa sat across from him in a private dining room at the Mercer, one manicured finger circling the rim of her wine glass. So she's just walking away? Basically. Vanessa smiled. I expected more drama. Derek leaned back. So did I. What he did not say was that Savannah's silence irritated him. He had prepared for tears, accusations, threats. Instead, she seemed almost calm. Too calm. 3 days before mediation, Savannah returned to the penthouse to collect boxes from the nursery. Derek was in his study with the door partly open. Vanessa was with him. Savannah stopped when she heard her name. She never had anything before me, Derek said. Vanessa laughed softly. And now she gets to go back to whatever she was. Savannah lowered her eyes. In her hands was the wooden rocking chair invoice. Her mother had bought it years earlier. Before Derek. Before Manhattan. Before any of this. She quietly stepped away. That evening, Monica reviewed Derek's financial disclosure, then stopped at one page. A funding structure. An institutional investor. BLC partners. Monica looked at Savannah. Does Derek know what Bradford means? Savannah touched the pendant at her throat. No, Monica's expression sharpened. Does he know BLC? He knows the initials. And the connection? Savannah shook her head. He never asked. Monica leaned back slowly. For the first time since taking the case, she almost smiled. Not because Derek was about to lose money. Because he was about to learn the difference between having information and ever truly knowing the woman he married. Part 5. Back to the room, Savannah Elise. Thomas Avery stopped. Not dramatically. Not long enough for anyone outside the room to notice. But Monica Keene noticed. Savannah noticed. And for the first time that afternoon, Thomas looked less like Derek Pierce's attorney and more like a man who had just discovered a dangerous fact inside his own paperwork. The mediation room was silent except for rain tapping against the glass. Derek glanced up from his phone. Well, Thomas adjusted the page beneath his hand. Then he read the name exactly as it appeared on the certified marriage record. Savannah Elise Bradford Pierce. The word Bradford seemed to hang in the room. Thomas looked at Savannah. Bradford? Savannah met his eyes. Yes. Derek frowned. What about it? Thomas did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward the disclosure binder beside him and flipped several pages. Paper whispered against paper. Savannah felt the baby move beneath her palm. Monica remained perfectly still. Thomas found the document. Read one line. Then another. His jaw tightened. Savannah, he said carefully. Your mother's family is the Bradford family? Yes. Derek gave a short, irritated laugh. What Bradford family? No one laughed with him. That was when his expression changed. Only slightly. A crack in the confidence. Thomas looked at him. Bradford Legacy. Derek stared. For half a second, the words meant nothing. Then recognition arrived. Slowly. Bradford Legacy? Thomas nodded. Derek leaned forward. The investment family? Savannah said nothing. The Bradford Legacy? Still nothing. Derek looked at Monica, then back at Thomas. What exactly is going on? Monica opened a thin folder. Not thick. Not theatrical. Just 6 pages. She slid it across the table. Thomas reached for it before Derek could. On the first page was a trust certification. On the second, a family office authorization. On the third, a legal structure chart. Thomas read silently. His face drained of color. Derek's impatience sharpened. Thomas. No response. Thomas, tell me what you're reading. Thomas looked up at Savannah again. There was no accusation in his face. Only disbelief. You are a beneficiary of the Bradford Legacy Trust? Savannah's voice was soft. Yes. Derek turned toward her, so quickly his chair moved against the floor. You're what? She finally looked at him. Directly. Calmly. I'm a beneficiary. The room changed. Not because Savannah raised her voice. Because she did not. Derek stared at the woman he had married. The woman whose old Subaru embarrassed him. The woman whose simple dresses he replaced. The woman he had told investors knew nothing about capital. The woman he believed had entered his life with nothing. His eyes moved to the pendant at her throat. The small gold oval. The engraved B. He had seen it hundreds of times. Never once had he asked twice. Thomas turned another page. Then froze. Derek saw it. What now? Thomas swallowed. At the bottom of the page was a corporate name. Bradford Legacy Capital Partners. 3 words Derek knew better than almost anything. His company's largest prospective institutional backer. His waterfront deal. His future. Derek's face hardened. BLC. Thomas said nothing. Derek looked at Savannah. BLC is your family? Savannah's expression did not change. Yes. The rain struck harder against the windows. Derek pushed back from the table. You knew? I knew who they were. And you never told me? Savannah held his gaze. I told you my mother's name was Bradford on our second date. Derek opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because somewhere beneath the anger, he remembered. A small restaurant. A cheap bottle of wine. Savannah smiling across the table. My mother was a Bradford. He had nodded. Then changed the subject to himself. Thomas closed the folder. His voice was quieter now. Derek. Derek looked at him. And Thomas asked the question no millionaire ever expects to hear from his own lawyer. You really didn't know who you married? Part 6. The name Derek stared at Savannah as if the woman across from him had changed faces. She had not. Same champagne blonde hair. Same quiet blue-gray eyes. Same ivory maternity dress. Same hand resting protectively over their unborn daughter. Only now, the name he had ignored for 3 years had become impossible to overlook. Bradford Legacy Capital is your family? He asked again. Savannah nodded. Derek laughed once, but there was no humor left in it. So this was the plan. Monica's eyes sharpened. Savannah remained still. What plan? Derek stood. The waterfront deal. The divorce. All of this. His chair scraped violently across the floor. You knew BLC was financing my company. I learned during financial disclosure. And you expect me to believe that? Thomas lowered his voice. Derek, sit down. No, he pointed at Savannah. She's been sitting there pretending she wants nothing while her family has their hands around my company. Savannah looked at his finger, then at his face. You think this is revenge? What else would it be? Monica slid another document across the table. Thomas picked it up. This time he read aloud. Preliminary Investment Committee Approval, dated February 19th. Derek froze. Thomas looked at him. That was almost 4 months ago. The room went quiet. Savannah had discovered Derek's affair 6 weeks later. The divorce papers came after that. Thomas turned the page. The investment process began before the separation. Derek's hand slowly dropped. Savannah spoke. I had nothing to do with their decision. But you could. It was not a question. Savannah did not lie. Yes. Derek stared at her. You could stop the deal. Yes. A heartbeat. Another. Will you? No. That answer confused him more than any threat could have. You expect me to believe you're protecting me? I'm not protecting you. Her voice stayed soft. I'm refusing to punish hundreds of employees because my husband betrayed me. Derek's face tightened. For the first time, nobody in the room seemed interested in how much money he had. Thomas continued examining the documents. Savannah is one beneficiary, he said. The trust is professionally managed. The investment committee operates independently. Derek looked at Savannah. Then why hide it? I didn't. You never told me you came from one of the wealthiest families in the country. I told you my mother was a Bradford. That is not the same thing. No, Savannah's eyes held his. It isn't. The baby kicked. She placed her palm over the movement. I told you about my grandfather's company. You checked your phone. Derek said nothing. I told you why my mother left the family office. You interrupted me to talk about your first development deal. A memory surfaced behind his eyes. A small Italian restaurant. Savannah laughing. A candle between them. Her saying, my grandfather built something big, but my mother wanted a different life. Derek remembered his own answer. You should see what I'm building. His throat tightened. Savannah continued. You knew pieces of me, Derek. Her voice almost broke. Almost. You just never thought any piece that wasn't about you was important. No one moved. Not Monica. Not Thomas. Not even Derek. He looked again at the woman he had called financially meaningless. Then at the 6-page file that connected her name to a financial institution he had spent 2 years begging to notice him. His face changed. Not fear. Something worse. Understanding. Then Thomas turned to the final page. His expression tightened again. There's one more thing. Derek looked at him. Thomas tapped a paragraph near the bottom. The Bradford Committee is meeting tomorrow to decide whether Pierce Urban Development receives final approval. Derek slowly turned toward Savannah. For the first time in their marriage, he looked at her not as someone standing behind him, but as someone he could no longer see past. Part 7. The Reversal Without Revenge. Derek called Savannah at 11:43 the next morning. She watched his name flash across her phone while sitting beside a window in Monica Keene's office. For 3 rings, she did nothing. Then she answered, "Hello." Derek did not say hello back. "Did you speak to them?" Savannah closed her eyes. There it was. Not "Are you okay?" Not "How is the baby?" Not "I'm sorry." The deal. No, a pause. "You're sure?" "Yes." Across from her, Monica looked down at a document and said nothing. Derek exhaled sharply. "The committee meets today." "I know. And you're telling me you haven't said anything?" "I told you yesterday. I won't interfere." His voice softened then. Not with tenderness. With strategy. "Savannah, listen to me. This deal affects hundreds of people. I know. It affects employees, contractors, families. I know." Derek hesitated, then finally said the thing he had actually called to say. "You could help." Savannah looked out at Manhattan. Rain had cleared overnight. The city glittered beneath a hard blue sky. "I could." Another pause. "Will you?" "No." Derek's breathing changed. "You just said you wouldn't interfere." "I won't." "Then what is this?" "This is me doing exactly what I promised." Her voice stayed calm. "I won't hurt the deal because of our marriage. And I won't save it because of our marriage." Silence. For once, Derek had no language prepared. Savannah continued. "If your company deserves the investment, the committee will approve it. And if they don't, then they won't. You really don't care what happens to me." The accusation came quickly. Savannah looked down at her stomach. The baby shifted beneath her hand. "No, Derek." Her voice grew quieter. "I cared too much for too long." That afternoon, the consequences began moving beyond the mediation room. Not because Savannah leaked anything and not because Monica called reporters. Pierce Urban Development had to update lenders and its board about the pending BLC decision, and word of the financing review moved quickly through the people already involved in the deal. By evening, phones were ringing. Vanessa was the first to panic. She entered Derek's office without knocking. "Tell me this isn't true." Derek stood beside the window. "What?" "Savannah Bradford. All of it." He did not answer. Vanessa stared at him. "You married a Bradford and didn't know?" The question hit differently coming from her. Derek turned away. "We were married before any of this mattered." Vanessa gave a short laugh. "It mattered. You just didn't know it mattered." He looked at her then. Something in her expression made the room feel colder. Not concern. Calculation. "What happens if they reject the deal?" she asked. Derek understood. "Not what happens to your employees. Not what happens to you. What happens to the money?" That night, Vanessa left early. Derek stayed alone. At 8:16 p.m., his phone rang. Thomas Avery. The committee voted. Derek stood. And final approval. He closed his eyes. For 1 second, relief almost buckled his knees. Then Thomas continued. With revised governance, safeguards, independent oversight, no family influence, no special treatment. Derek slowly sat down. So Savannah didn't stop it. No. Did she support it? No. Thomas paused. She stayed out of it entirely. After the call, Derek stared at the dark office. The deal had survived. His company had survived. And somehow, that made the loss feel worse. He called Savannah again. This time, when she answered, his voice was different. "Why did you marry me?" Savannah said nothing. Derek swallowed. "You had all of that. Why me?" Her answer came softly. "Because when I married you, I thought you were the one person who would never care." Derek closed his eyes. No accusation could have cut deeper. Savannah ended the call. And for the first time, Derek Pierce understood that she had not destroyed him. She had done something far more permanent. She had left him alone with the truth. Part 8. Nothing. 1 year later, Savannah stood in the same kind of room where Derek once laughed at her. Only this time, no one was dividing a marriage. Sunlight poured through tall windows inside the new Bradford Housing Initiative headquarters in Brooklyn, warming white walls covered with architectural plans, family photographs, and handwritten thank you notes from tenants who had finally received permanent housing. Savannah wore a pale cream dress. Her blonde hair fell loosely over her shoulders. Around her neck was the same small gold pendant. Nothing about it looked expensive. That was why she still loved it. A child laughed behind her. Savannah turned. Lily Bradford Pierce was 11 months old, balanced against Derek's chest, one tiny fist wrapped around the knot of his tie. Derek looked different. Not poorer. Not ruined. Pierce Urban Development had survived. The waterfront project had moved forward under tighter oversight, and the company remained profitable. But something in him had changed. The old certainty was gone. The belief that every room belonged to him had disappeared somewhere between the divorce settlement and the first night he sat alone in the penthouse, without Savannah there to make it feel like home. Her bag is by the chair, Savannah said. Derek nodded. Diapers. Front pocket. Bottle. Side compartment. He almost smiled. I'm learning. Savannah smiled back. Only slightly. Their property settlement had been signed before Lily was born, and the divorce judgment and child-related orders were finalized later. No public war. No courtroom spectacle. No child used as leverage. Their parenting schedule was precise. Their communication was careful. And Vanessa Cole had disappeared from Derek's life before the ink on the divorce decree was dry. Some relationships could survive reality. Theirs had only survived fantasy. Derek adjusted Lily in his arms. The baby grabbed his chin. For a moment, his face softened completely. Savannah watched him. She did not hate him. That surprised her sometimes. Hatred would have been easier. But hatred still required a kind of attachment. Savannah had something quieter now. Distance. Peace. Derek looked around the housing center. You came back to this. Savannah followed his gaze. To what? The work you were doing when we met. Yes. He nodded slowly. I forgot how much it mattered to you. Savannah did not answer. That sentence contained the whole marriage. Forgot. He had forgotten what mattered to her because he had spent years remembering only what mattered to him. Lily began chewing on his tie. Derek laughed softly and pulled it away. Then his eyes fell to Savannah's pendant. He stared at it for a moment. You still wear that. My mother gave it to me. I know. This time, the words sounded different. He knew now. Derek shifted Lily higher against his chest. Then he looked at Savannah. You meant it that day, didn't you? She tilted her head. What? When you said you wanted nothing. The room around them continued moving. Phones rang. Someone pushed a cart of files down the hallway. A family entered through the glass doors carrying 2 suitcases and a sleeping child. Savannah watched them. Then she looked back at Derek. Yes. He swallowed. I thought you were trying to make a point. I was. What point? Savannah stepped closer and tucked Lily's blanket around her small legs. I didn't want anything that required me to become smaller just to keep it. Derek said nothing. There was no clever answer left. No negotiation. No lawyer to rescue him from the meaning of the sentence. Savannah handed him the diaper bag. Their fingers almost touched. Almost. Her nap is at 2. I remember. I know. Derek turned toward the doors. Lily looked back over his shoulder and reached one small hand toward her mother. Savannah smiled. Then Derek stopped. Just once. He looked at Savannah standing beneath the Bradford Housing Initiative sign, surrounded by the work she had loved before him and would continue loving after him. For the first time, he understood what he had mistaken for emptiness. She had never asked for nothing because she had no value. She had asked for nothing because she finally knew hers. Derek walked out carrying their daughter. Savannah turned back toward the families waiting inside. And the man who once laughed because his pregnant wife wanted nothing finally understood that nothing had been the most expensive thing he ever lost.